Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Congressman Anthony D'Esposito. Congressman, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me.
We sit here a little less than 3 weeks after Donald Trump survived an assassination attempt at a political rally in Pennsylvania. And since then, you introduced legislation that would require every full-time House employee to undergo active shooter training. Can you talk to us a little bit about your bill?
Sure. I think that, quite frankly, it was surprising to me that it wasn't something that's already mandated by those who work on Capitol Hill. I mean, if you think and you look at the threats, the security threats that we have across this nation, there are many facilities in Washington, D.C. and on Capitol Hill that are at the top of that target list. We are often seen as, the epicenter of democracy. It's a place where we welcome thousands upon thousands of protesters each year who are there about the issues that they are passionate about. So, quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that it wasn't already in place. But after the assassination attempt on President Trump, I think it's one of those. It's an idea that is a proactive approach looking forward. As someone who has spent a career in emergency management, both in the fire service and law enforcement, after a large-scale incident, you always have a critique, and you say to yourself, "What can we do better next time?" After every emergency, you say, Are we more prepared now than we were before the last one?" And I think that this is an opportunity for us to be prepared better for, God forbid, if this were to ever happen again.
After that assassination attempt, you really saw bipartisan calls questioning, A, how did this happen, amongst other things. But is there bipartisan support for your legislation?
I mean, we'll see. I'm hoping. I think it's common sense legislation. I think that I don't believe that education is ever wasted to give our staffers and our coworkers the ability to train in an active shooter situation. Not only is it better to prepare them and to prepare our staff, but it makes the lives of law enforcement professionals a little bit easier because, God forbid, we are in that situation. Anyone who has lived through any type of shooting or any type of incident like that, there's a lot of emotion and people do get scared and people don't know how to react. And I'm not saying that training will prepare everyone to react exactly how we want them, but I think that having that bit of training not only will probably bring comfort to our coworkers and our staffers on Capitol Hill, but it'll allow law enforcement professionals to do their job better.
Your legislation is obviously a great proactive approach, but when we saw that shooting, that assassination attempt, both sides of the aisle were horrified at that type of political violence. So what do you think needs to happen to ensure that that type of thing doesn't happen again?
Well, I think that the rhetoric needs to calm down, but unfortunately, just moments after the assassination attempt, I mean, anyone who reads through my social media feed can see that the rhetoric has not calmed down. I mean, people are vile. The things that people say. Just last week, my office received two separate bomb threats, one of which an arrest was made. So the rhetoric is there. People are angry. People are volatile. And unfortunately, as we get closer to the election, and now I think with the change at the top of the ticket, there is that volatility continues. The anger and the political rhetoric continues. And I think for us, and at least for me, what my focus on throughout this campaign has been, I mean, I haven't been one to, call out President Biden with regards to his cognitive decline. My focus was, on the issues that matter most to the American people, the issues that when my neighbors in the 4th Congressional District, when they're sitting around their dinner table at night or when they're having breakfast together on a Sunday morning, the things that they talk about, the economy, crime, our southern border, about the fact that when they go to the supermarket, everything costs more. Those are the issues that I want to talk about. I want to talk about my record in Congress, working in a bipartisan fashion, being ranked one of the top 10 most moderate and bipartisan members of the conference. Those are the things that I want to talk about. Restoring SALT, to those high taxed states, especially New York. The work that I've done to fully fund the 9/11 healthcare bill, you know, the legislation that I've written and steps that I've taken to make our country safer and to give law enforcement professionals the resources that they need to keep this country safe. The votes that I've taken to make sure that women maintain that ability to make that choice, that the amendments that I've voted down, the fact that myself, along with other New Yorkers, New York moderates, have kept the agricultural appropriations bill off the floor of the House. Why? Because it restricted women's access to mifepristone. That's the stuff that I want to talk about, the actual facts, where the Democrats continue to spew campaign rhetoric and lies. I'm going to focus on the issues. I'm going to focus on my record. And I know that that's the way I handled the 2022 campaign. It's the way I'm handling this campaign. It worked in 2022, and I'm confident it'll work again in 24.
You've worked across the aisle before, and I am curious, as someone with a law enforcement background, how do both sides of the aisle turn down the temperature on this rhetoric?
Well, I think it's got to be a step that that is taken that's actually believed. You can't just come on radio shows. You can't just come on TV. You can't just post Facebook and Twitter posts and say that we should calm down the rhetoric, but then not actually calm down that rhetoric. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. I mean, again, the arguments that some people are making on our social media feeds, I mean, the calls that we get to our offices, the letters, the threats, I mean, it just doesn't seem that it is calming down. And as people get, again, closer to the election, we just finished our convention a week or so ago, and the Democrats will have theirs in a couple of weeks. It's unfortunate, but I think that rhetoric continues, and if not, we'll only get worse. And I have a strong concern, and I know many of my colleagues do as well, especially in places like New York, where we get back into the school season. I think we're going to see those encampments, we're going to see those protests start kicking up again on our college campuses, which are only going to hurt the attempt to calm down the rhetoric.
You said that your office receives multiple bomb threats. Former President Trump survived an assassination attempt. When you see all of these incidents, on a personal note, do you feel safe?
Well, I feel safe by the measures that I've taken to make sure that myself, my family, and my staff are safe. It's and I have, I'm very thankful for the men and women of the Nassau County Police Department, as well as the village police departments, all that protect and serve New York's 4th Congressional District. So, I am confident, I am comfortable, but that's one of the reasons as to why I work so hard to deliver funding back here to the district. We're building, I just visited this past weekend, we're building a state-of-the-art, and I would argue probably one of the finest training facilities anywhere in the country, right in the heart of my district. And I was able to deliver close to $4 million as part of the tactical village that we're building to give law enforcement professionals throughout our county and the village police departments a hands-on approach to how to handle incidents. We are going to have in that tactical village a mock place of worship, a bar restaurant, a bank, so they can actually pull into a tactical village. They can engage with suspects using simunitions. So that's the, so to answer your question, do I feel safe? Yeah, I do. But that doesn't mean that we let our guard down. It doesn't mean that we don't keep our heads on a swivel. And it doesn't mean that we get complacent. We need to make sure that we stay the course. We need to stay vigilant, and we need to make sure that our law enforcement professionals have the resources they need. And we need to, continue to take proactive approaches, just like we are right now with this legislation, in providing training and education to the workforce on Capitol Hill and those who work in our district office to prepare them better for what's unfortunate in this political rhetoric.
I do want to go back to that assassination attempt. Since then, there have been multiple investigations into how this happened. What are some of the biggest questions you still have less than 3 weeks later?
Yeah, so I sit on the House Homeland Security Committee, and we are conducting a parallel investigation with House oversight and obviously the newly formed task force that was put together by Speaker Johnson. And I think that The questions, there are so many questions, but I think some of the most important are looking at the plans that were laid out for that rally in Pennsylvania. Let's look at the pre-plan operation. Let's look at the plan of attack for the day. Were the resources that were requested, were they all provided? Were the resources that were on site, were they trained for that situation? Were they members of the Secret Service who had previous training at large-scale events? Was the communication with the local agencies, the state and local agencies? What was their communication? What was the communication breakdown? I mean, we could rewind back. I mean, as someone again who has spent a lifetime in the first responder world, I mean, we could rewind back to September 11th, 2001, when we experienced some of the worst communication breakdown probably in our history. And why? Because agencies weren't able to communicate with one another on scene. And were unable to provide critical information that probably would have saved lives on that morning. And I think that, again, you asked your question, are we better off today than we were at that last incident? And, we need to make sure that the Secret Service are coordinating with local agencies. And we've all seen it. It's one of those things, the Secret Service comes in, or a bigger law enforcement agency. I was a member of the NYPD. You're one of the biggest forces. You have the newest toys and resources. And when you come up and when you come in and show, I mean, just last week for the Benjamin Netanyahu speech, there were 225 uniformed NYPD cops that came to Washington, D.C. to help the Capitol Police. And when they show up, they are a real presence. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be coordination and communication with all agencies on the ground. So that's a conversation we need to have. We need to make sure that none of the decisions made on that day and leading up to that day were political. What were there resources that weren't provided to that rally because of who the rally was for? We asked the questions. Why wasn't RFK Jr. provided the Secret Service protection that his team requested months and months ago? So there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. As someone who spent a career in law enforcement, I am not ready to start Monday morning quarterbacking it and pointing fingers until I have all the facts in front of me, till I read the transcripts, till I hear the radio transmissions, till I have the opportunity to interview and interrogate the individuals who need to be held accountable. And then I will utilize my 16 years of investigative experience to make an informed decision on how we move forward.
You did ask some questions during a House Homeland Security Committee hearing, and you questioned the Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner. Just what did you think of that hearing, his responses? And I know that you said you don't want a Monday morning quarterback just yet, but do you think this is a failure of local law enforcement, Secret Service, or both?
I think right now it's a failure of protecting the asset, as we refer to in general. I'm not certain who the finger is to point at yet, but what I do know is that there are some serious questions that need to be answered. I know that we not only failed President Trump, we failed the American people, and we certainly failed the victims. The firefighter who lost his life protecting his family and those who were injured, we failed them. And for that, there are questions that must be answered, and there are those that need to be held accountable. And this is not about political rhetoric. And I actually feel pretty good about the fact that I think the committees of jurisdiction and members, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in the House, have been pretty apolitical about investigating this incident. And I have spoken to some of my colleagues on the furthest left of their aisle, and I think that the genuine feeling is that we need to get to the bottom of this so it never happens again.
I mean, to your point, members from both parties have called for the director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, to step down. She did resign a day after that House Oversight Committee hearing. Do you think that's enough?
No, I don't think it's enough. I think that what we're dealing with is probably something systemic, and it is a situation that, again, we really need to get to the bottom of it. And this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen after one committee hearing. This is going to take an investigation looking into how the planning goes for incidents like this, the communication between the local, state, and federal agencies, the cooperation that is being had between the Secret Service and the those who are requesting the protection. All of that needs to be taken into consideration. I think the failure of the director of the Secret Service, that was obviously the most obvious, and I'm thankful that she resigned. I think that we without a doubt needed new leadership in the Secret Service, but that the end of the investigation is not near. We need to take every opportunity that we can, again, to address exactly how the Secret Service plans for these types of incidents, the communication that they have or don't have, the interaction between the local agencies, and that's not just communication while at the incident, but actually leading up to the incident and planning for the incident. I mean, when we spoke to the colonel in charge of the Pennsylvania State Police, he said and testified on the record that he had no knowledge of the plan that was in place for that day. He never actually saw the plan. Was he in communication? Yes, he received an email saying that there was going to be a rally requesting assets from the state police, but the actual plan in writing for that day, at least he said he never had his eyes on. So I think that there's a failure in many parts. I think that this is a situation where, again, very often the Secret Service comes into places, especially a place like this, which is somewhat of a smaller community, and the communication just falls apart because perhaps the local agencies think, all right, the Secret Service has this, but this is not about one law enforcement agency taking the lead. This is about law enforcement professionals working together in order to protect not only President Trump in this situation, but protect all of the attendees.
So just to summarize what you're saying, you don't think that this was a one-off incident. You think that there is a systemic problem within the Secret Service?
I think that there's a systemic problem within communication of law enforcement agencies. Yes, I think that that has been the case for a long time. The ability for us to communicate between multiple agencies has always been difficult, and with the concern of cybersecurity issues and hacking issues, it's only become worse and more difficult. But we have to find a way to, in situations like this, be able to communicate critical information. I mean, looking at the timeline, which will become more concrete in the weeks ahead, they had ample time to notify the team around President Trump to say, listen, we think something's going on. Perhaps the president should wait a few minutes and not take the stage yet. We have an incident, and we really want to get the president off the stage now. Wherever that fell into the time frame, the opportunity was there, and we failed. And I say we as a whole, we were failed because communication fell apart.
Congressman, we will leave it there. Per usual, I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, thank you.